Hello, Tungsten Miner here. More progress on the house here. As you can see, actually quite a lot more progress. I've now got the outside perimeter completely taken care of, and I've got all the rooms kind of floored and floors and walls all done. I've got all the perimeters done on the inside here, all the outer windows done. The limestone boundary all the way around is done. And I've kind of gotten around to doing the top floor. Now there'll be some more stuff that I want to add, like some kind of better entranceway than this. But basically the rough shape of the entire downstairs is pretty much done. So here's a second room that actually has a floor, has a ceiling on it. So yeah, let me walk around and show how that came about a little bit. So let's see, we'll start by just kind of going outside here. So what I did to get this outside shape is the same as I've described in a bunch of my other videos, so kind of rewind a bit if you haven't seen that. And then just repeated the process using my positive chisel designs. I'd go and grab the chisel design and then apply it, and then walk around a quarter turn and then start applying it to that side over there. So if I had grabbed the stuff just to the right of the other entranceway, I'd start applying it again just to the right of this entranceway and then going around. And when I get around all the way to here, which is basically matching that entranceway on the other side, I'd start here and start working my way around again. In actual fact, what I did was I did this part first just to get this simple piece of glass. And I did it in much the same way. I did the glass from that edge over there all the way around to that edge there. And that gave me 1/4 of the overall structure. But just the little glass part, right, from here over to there. And then I copied, or actually I even stopped about here. I went from there to there and then used, let's see, I don't have it on me at the moment, but head back over here. There's another one of the templates. This guy, this mirror chisel design. So if I grab something that's like this one, for example, and I click on it, I've now got a mirror design. Yeah, as I've said in previous videos, I always play in survival, but I often do these videos in creative just so I can fly around and show things better. And now, when I put it in placement mode, you can see the glass is going to be the opposite of that. So that's how you get things mirrored or reversed. So when I was doing game mode creative, here we go. So when I was doing this stuff up here, because it's so nitpicky and fine work, I'd do 1/8 of it to about there. And then I'd use the mirror design to one by one mirror a piece, grab a copy of the positive design off of the mirror, and then drop that down here. And then move to the next one, do the mirroring again, then have another one, and another one, until I'd gotten all 9 of them done. And then I'd walk around to the next section, which is going to use the same mirror. So I'd start basically here and then work my way backwards. Make a little more progress here, mirror it, make a little more progress here, mirror it, back and forth until I met in the middle. And then I had 1/4 completely done, and I didn't have to fuss with the mirroring anymore, because that actually is even more time consuming and painstaking. So then I just took the positive chisel design and grabbed as much as I could grab, moved over to the next space, did that part, moved over to the next space, did that part, and then completed the last little bit. Then came back around and copied the next chunk and repeated it over and across. Once I had this thing done, I came through and put enough limestone around so that I could do the kind of carving that you've seen me do in prior videos to get things so that this is 6 units wider than the glass is on each side. And once I had that, I used the same trick with positive chisel design to go all the way around, little chunk at a time, copying. Let's see. Then I did copying the windows down, and I had just crude Nice bricks at the time. And then when I wanted to get these bricks to have the same pattern as above, I actually went and made myself a negative chisel design. And the way this thing works is, here I can grab, say, this pillar, and then I can go find any old block here, and you can see how when I click it, it's given it the same shape, but preserved the materials. So it doesn't clone the material, it just clones the shape. And that way I could take the limestone version and copy it onto a Nice Bricks version. And basically I just walked around the building doing the same trick of copy a bunch of patterns, apply it down there, walk around a quarter turn, apply it again, and so on and so on and so on until I had everything all taken care of. Extremely time consuming on a building this size. I don't think I'll be trying to do something like this again. It's just so much work to get all this taken care of, a little piece at a time. Anyway, yeah, so then was doing the inside, and instead of trying to do things in a in the same fashion, I just walked around with my negative chisel designs, because as I'm going through, you can see like this one here, when I was doing it from the outside, you can see it has that one pixel. So when I was doing the pass, going around the outside, I actually did get this block, which meant this whole inside surface was correct. And the same thing for down there. So all I really needed to do was every once in a while there's a block, say like this one, which doesn't touch the outside at all, and so was not correct on the inside. And so I just walk around and fix those one by one. And then to do the floors, I had started off by just digging out all of this material, and just by using a regular pickaxe to just dig up the floor material. Oh yeah, forgot about that. Well, I'll fix that later. And then one by one would go in and use the chisels and bits to break up a big chunk of the block and then fill in the pieces using, let's see, this connected plane setting. So I could fill in the hole, and that will fill in whatever is left of the hole and not override the blocks that are already there. So that's how I got all of those done. For the walls, I had already extended them so they went past where the glass was going to wind up being. And all I really needed to do was go around the outside edges here and then trim them back again. So I just got myself my chisel and set it to be in connected plane mode, and then just click, 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 click until there's only 2 bits sticking out from whatever's the furthest out chunk of glass. And that way, the shorter of the 2 sides is going to be at least 2 bits wide. And that gives me that. The pillars I think I had already had done last time, so I added pillars up above here, changed these supports to what I ultimately wanted them to be, as these Nice bricks. I decided to have the structure make a little bit of sense, that the Nice bricks are going to go halfway under, and then this is going to be on the top, so it's kind of crossing over like you do in wood joinery for cabinetry and such, and then the same thing over here. So that is half Nice and half limestone in that little joint right there. And then added in the rest of the pillars. I'll get the rest of them done next time. For where we transition, I filled in half of it with the jungle planks and half of it with the granite, so they transition nicely. Filled in the floors for the doorways. This is the same molasses doors bug I was talking about before. It manifests a little differently here just because of what blocks are around that door. And this is actually not missing, so you can see the tooltip in Wyla is showing that there is in fact something there. It's just not visible for some reason. So I think, very sadly, I may have to give up on using molasses doors. I did get in touch with the mod author, and unfortunately Minecraft 1.10.2 is no longer one of the versions that they're supporting, because there's Minecraft 1.11, 1.12 both out now, so they're not going to backport any bugs to this version. Unfortunately, a great many of the other mods that I really, really want to use are not available in any later version of Minecraft. So I may have to just decide that Melissa Stores is not one of those things that I'm going to be able to use in this mod pack. Which is very sad. I really like that mod. Let's see. Yeah, so I extended this little border. I kind of like the way that looks, so that the larger of the doorways have this little gap in between, but preserve that rounded border. For the smaller doorways, though, that didn't make a lot of sense. 6 bits in and 6 bits in, that's 12 out of 16 bits. I mean, there'd only be like 4 bits in the middle here of a pathway. That would look kind of weird, so I just went with completely wooden all the way through there. Let's see, the doorways are the same, this is all the same, that's the same. Oh, I copied this staircase. Walked right by it, didn't even talk about it. Yeah, so again, using these positive design patterns, I just went and got samples of all the different unique pieces and then just rearranged them so that they all fit, and then went ahead and made the same kind of transition into the top layer that I had for the other one. So now I've got 2 of those staircases, and I don't have a bunch of dirt over here anymore. Filled in the tops of all of these walls with limestone. Eventually what I'm going to do is, as you can kind of see here, I want the ceiling to be limestone on the top and limestone in the middle. So I'll have 1/2 meter thick ceilings. Which when you say it, that like sounds really thick, but in Minecraft it kind of works, I guess, to cover all of this area. But before I do that, I want to get this inner circle finished so that as I'm filling in the ceiling, I'm filling it in properly and not have to break off bits of it and then fill it all in again. Let's see. I decided on polished andesite for these pillars. I'd been using just plain Nice stone before, but the pattern was just a little too busy for the pillars. It looks nice in the bricks, but it was too much for the pillars because the pillars are already kind of busy. And the polished andesite is a little bit less going on in the texture itself. So the extra detail in the pillar, in the actual shape, doesn't make things too overwhelming. What else to talk about here? I think that's about it. Should talk a little bit about food here. Yeah, my kitchen is through here. So obviously if you're playing in game mode survival, you can get hungry. And with having Spice of Life installed, you need to have at least 6 and preferably more unique, different foods that you're going to have available. Otherwise, you find that certain foods don't provide as much nutrition. So this, for example, I've been eating a lot of steaks, apparently, and I don't get nearly as much value out of them anymore. I can keep eating them for a while, but eventually they'll stop providing any nutritional value at all. Whereas cooked chicken I haven't had any of, so I get full value out of eating that. Obviously, here's another one that I've had recently. I must have had an apple smoothie. And I keep saying must have had, and I'm not sure, because I'm using this lunchbox. Now the lunchbox is kind of cool. If I'm standing here and I just right-click, it shows me its inventory, which is whatever the last foods got loaded into it. If I shift and right-click, it flips the lid open. And so now it's an item of food, just like a baked potato or a piece of bread. And I can just hold down the right-click button to eat. Of course, my character's not hungry at the moment, so that's not going to do me any good. But if in this condition I right-click on a chest, so let's close this, for example, take all the food out, and I'll drop everything in here. So now my lunchbox, when I shift right-click, is empty. I can just right-click on a chest, and it's going to fill it up with food. Well, how does it decide what food? Well, it's actually really, really smart about that. It's going to pick food that I haven't eaten recently, if possible. So if I've got a chest like this one, which has way more than 12 different foods, which is the threshold that I have in my config files, which I believe is the default threshold, it's going to look at the foods in there and say, all right, let me find some foods that give decently good nutritional value and which I haven't eaten recently. So I get all of that value from. Which means the whole thing in Spice of Life of like trying to use different foods and have variety in your diet and so on becomes a lot less manual work. I don't have to think about what foods do I actually have. I just need to think about making sure I have enough variety in that chest. Now, another fun little thing that Spice of Life adds, in addition to the lunchbox, whose recipe is not super cheap. So weighted pressure plates is 2 ingots each, so you need 6 ingots of iron. And early in the game, iron is not necessarily easy to come by if you need that much of it, especially in this mod pack, remember, which has a different kind of ore gen. What is easy to come by, though, is sugarcane. So here's a lunch bag. Lunch bag works exactly like the lunch box, except it only holds 3 items, and it's made out of paper, which obviously is super easy to make. You need 3 reeds in order to make yourself a lunch bag. And it has the same characteristics of being smart about choosing which foods to add to your lunch bag in that case. But while the lunch box holds 6, it only holds 3, so you might need to pack yourself a couple of lunches if you're going to be going for a ways. So coming up with a variety of foods, I've talked about Harvestcraft in my prior Let's Play series at great length, so I'll just lightly touch on it for the moment and probably get back into it in more detail later. But here I've got a chest full of all sorts of different raw materials and cooking implements. And so if I decide, okay, hey, I'm getting low on food, I want to make something, I can come over here and take a look and say, well, I've got a lot of chicken. Let me look at some recipes for chicken. And, not recipes, I want usages. Here we go. And there's a ton of recipes. And this is all from Harvestcraft. So chicken curry and kung pao chicken and chicken gumbo and sweet and sour chicken, all sorts of things. But they require you to have these various ingredients. So raw chicken, easy enough. Broccoli. In this mod pack, you can't find broccoli in the world. You actually have to develop that species using agrocraft. So crossbreeding different wild plants that you can find on their own until eventually you manage to get broccoli as one of the outputs. Which is why I haven't made myself any General Tso's chicken, as I haven't done that work yet. There's somebody else who plays on this server who really likes this agricultural stuff, so I suspect that she will get to it before I do. But also some chili peppers and some flour. The recipe for flour is just taking your mortar and pestle and grinding up any kind of grain, really. So wheat, rice, potatoes, rye, lots of different choices. Sugar or honey, and then rice. And that gets you this recipe. But there's a whole bunch of recipes, and not all of them require quite so many ingredients. In fact, mostly the list is organized by how many ingredients are required. So by the time you get to the end here, stock is pretty easy to make. Flour is pretty easy to make, raw chicken, and that gets you a meaty stew, which is a large meal. So for relatively few ingredients, you can get yourself a decent meal here. Lemon chicken just requires lemons. I've found a lemon tree, butter, not too hard to make, and raw chicken, large meal. So yeah, there's a lot of choices that are better early game that don't require so many ingredients, that don't quite stack up to the really super fancy things that you can get later on. These cure a lot more hearts than those other ones do. But it is a lot easier to come by. So yeah, you pick and choose. So that's how I keep up my food supply. Some of the things that are easy to make early game, especially sandwiches. So the recipe for a sandwich is to just take regular bread, which is obviously 3 wheat, the same recipe. You can make it with dough, and that requires 1 flour, which you can make with wheat or rice or potatoes or whatever other things that make flour. But you also need to come by water and salt, which is actually kind of a nuisance, not super easy to do early game. So I tend to use up a lot more wheat to make bread with the easier recipe. Suffice to say, though, once you've done that, any kind of nut butter, so it could be peanuts, almonds, cashews, chestnut apparently, pistachio, peanut butter, yeah, okay, so we're back to the beginning. But cashew trees are easy to find in temperate climates, so I've got a cashew tree outside. And the recipe for making any kind of nut butter is to just take your juicer and run your nuts through it. And then making any kind of jelly is to take any kind of fruit, really, and then combine it with honey or sugar in a saucepan, and you get jelly. So now you've got a light meal that's really easy to make a lot of, because I've got all sorts of fruit trees out there. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different kinds of sandwiches based upon just my fruit trees. And the fruit trees you find just by walking around in the world. The same thing goes for smoothies. Any snowball, a juicer, and then 2 of whatever kind of fruit, and that gets you a smoothie. And the smoothies themselves count as a snack, so they don't cure quite as much hunger, but again, these are super easy to make. And yeah, again, a really good option for early in the game before you've acquired a lot of recipes. All right, I think that's about all there is to talk about. Lots more done in the house, a little bit more to go, but getting pretty close to done. Probably in the next video I will have the house finished, and if I had to guess, the next thing I would start looking at is some way of getting power going. Probably a windmill or some such to start with, and then try to work my way up to something more sophisticated. So we'll see what I get up to. Anyway, if you liked the video, hit like. If you want to know when that next video is going to be ready, hit the subscribe button, and I will talk to you later.